What's up guys, this is Voxide and this will be a quick guide on how to use these models and everything you need to know before you use them. So here I'm inside Cinema 4D and this will be Bridge 1. Alright, so I've imported Bridge 1 from the pack. And let's talk about the materials first of all. So all of these models come with material rigs. If you select your object that you've imported and go to user data, all of these will have a material tab like so. So most of these will contain a base 1 and base 2 and probably lights, and some other models will have something like extra, which extra is usually something that works well with the dark and less reflective color, but as you experiment with the models and try out different materials, you will sort of find the right balance. And also glass and other materials as well. So ideally what you would do is you would build your scene up first. So let's say, for example, I'm using this bridge object, and let's say we use a floor, and let's drag this down. Right, so let's say you're using something like a floor, and maybe then you'll add a wall. Alright, so just something quick like this, and you can see that each of these models come with some predetermined materials. Alright, but after you've set up your whole scene, you can go ahead and delete all of the materials, or you can edit those as well, but usually you can delete the materials, and then you would either import a material from a texture pack you might have, or just create your own material for your respective render engine. So for example, if I want to use the standard physical renderer in Cinema 4D, I would just create a material. Alright, so I know all of these objects have a base 1 and base 2, so you would create a new material, and I'll name this base 1, and let's say, you know, you're gonna add some reflectance to this material, and you can edit the material however you want and maybe darken the color, and after that you can just select your object, and then you can drag your material in the respective slot. Alright, and then you can see it updating, and the same thing will be for the rest of the materials. So let's say we will create base 2 as well, and let's just make this slightly different, and also add some reflectance to this, and maybe a Fresnel. Alright, so I'm not gonna spend time really working on the materials. I just want to give you the idea and the general workflow with models, and then you can drag this inside base 2. Alright, and then you will have something like a light, and let's turn on some luminance here, and these are just as a startup material. You know, you can go and edit them. You would probably spend a little more time on the materials than this, but this is just again to give you an idea. And let's see, we have a glass here, so let's also just make a glass. Alright, and this will have transparency, and let's increase the refraction, and then I'll place this in the glass. Alright, and let's make another material for, let's make this will be a dark, and I'll just try to make this a sort of like a matte material, and I'll place this inside the extra slot. Alright, and then simply use these materials for all of the rest of your objects in the scene. So you can see here base 1, base 2, base 3 and 4, maybe I'll use a dark, and maybe, you know, let's say we just want to use 2 materials instead of 4, so you can just drag this inside the slot as well. Or you can make your base 3 and 4 materials, so that's completely up to you. Of course, if you don't want to use the same pattern of materials that I set up for these models, you can of course just come inside the object itself, and for example, let's say you want this piece here to have a different color. You can of course create a material and just drag it over like so. So this would be the standard way of creating or actually texturing your objects. But I added these slots here just to give you something fast to work with, and this will make the whole process a lot faster and easier to set everything up, instead of, you know, just dragging the materials on top of each respective object and whatnot. So you will do the same thing for wall 1. You just drag your base 1, 2, and let's say dark and lights. Alright, so we set up the whole materials for the scene. So that's pretty much the gist with the materials. You can see that, for example, this wall 1 has a clones tab, alright, and I'll get into this in a second. But what's important to note here is that all of the objects have a materials tab. Alright, and then some objects will differ in extra options that they have. So some will have a clones tab, some will have an animation tab, and let's go over those right now actually, and I'll delete all of these. And let's take them one by one. So we have the bridges. Bridges are just static, just with the materials. Let's see displays. Alright, so displays are starting to have some extra options. You can see here that there's a materials tab and a screens tab. Alright, so I separated the tabs for these because I find it's a lot easier and cleaner this way to add your materials for the screens separately, so you can access the materials for all of the screens in case you maybe want to. Let's actually just make a material, and let's say you have an image here, and I'll just use a tile actually for this. Alright, so just a tiles, but probably you're gonna import a JPEG or something if you want. And then if I drag this inside screen 1, alright, you can see it here, although the tiling is a little messed up because this is supposedly going to work with images. So you have the individual control over the screens here. Usually I pre-compose or rather composite these screens inside After Effects, but you know, if you want to work directly inside Cinema 4D, you have these screens. Alright, let's take a look at the animation. Alright, so for animation we have the display height. Alright, so you can drag this down or below. You can create a pretty cool animation, like for example this is attached to a ceiling obviously, and then maybe you can have this lower down and you know, have the screens playing. So this is display 1. Let's take a look at display 2. Alright, so display 2 has completion, so you can animate the transition. You can have this you know, animate in the scene as well. And if I set this to 0%, you can see that there are some objects here. These are only visible in the viewport, so if I press Ctrl R to render, you can see that they are not visible. So these are only in the viewport. Alright, so you can animate the completion, and then you have an individual control for rotation. And then of course the materials. Let's move forward and let's see displays 3. Pretty much the same thing. You have the completion, you have rotation, and then you have also local rotation, so you can create this animation. Let's go to the next one, display 4. So this is attached to a cylinder type object. Right, have the completion. You can see here that there are objects on the viewport, but if you render, they won't show. Moving forward, there's display 5. This one is pretty interesting. So you have the animation controls, animate the reveal, and then the pitch. You can turn this screen around if you want, and there's the angle, so you can also angle this. You can see there's like sort of like this arm rig. You can have this pointing in whatever direction you want, or if you don't want to use this, you can just use normal values and have a fixed rotation. So that's pretty cool. Let's go forward. Let's see what's next. Openings. Alright, so we have some doors. All of the doors are pretty much rigged the same way. They have an opening, and then the materials. So all of the doors are the same, and I'll just go over an extra one. Now obviously this you can see that the door is remaining here, and I didn't want to use a bowl to slow things down because this will most likely be covered by a floor. So these are the door rigs. Moving onward to platform. Platform 1 to 5 are all pretty much the same, so they are pretty much static, and platform 6 has like additional 2 options. So you have an opening for this guy in the center, and then you can raise this guy in the middle here, and for example, if you want to have, say, like a logo reveal or reveal any type of object, let's say you want to reveal this cube, all you have to do is place this cube inside the center null, alright, inside the platform 6, and then this will follow the raise. right? So this guy is opening and then this guy is rising, so you're sort of like revealing your object. Let's move forward and let's talk about reflectors. Let's see reflector 1. Alright, so we have the materials, then we have the count. Alright, so you can have as many reflectors as you want. You can orient the rotation here, and then you have an option to turn on lights, and this option is mainly for getting an easy volumetric lights pass. So if I control R to render this, and this only works with standard renderer or even physical, so if you use something like Redshift or something outside of Cinema 4D, this won't work because this rig is based on Cinema 4D lights. But for example, if you want to use a different renderer, you can just simply turn off the lights, render these objects as they are within your current renderer. Then you can simply switch back to standard or physical, turn on lights, and then you can simply create a volumetric lights pass using this technique, which you then composite over the base render in After Effects or whatever compositing application you're using. So hopefully that makes sense. So these are the volumetric lights, and another option here is to control the light intensity. Alright, so you can see how that affects it, and if I click on randomize, this will create an animation, and this is working. You can see that this kind of slows down your scene, but essentially what this is doing is randomizing the volumetric lights, and is creating sort of like this random flicker effect between the lights, just to add a little bit more personality and a little bit more depth to the animation. So you have that option. Alright, let's move forward. Reflector 2 is going to be just a very basic reflector with just rotation. Alright, let's see, stadium reflectors. Alright, so we are getting a little bit complex here. We have the materials, and then we have some transform properties, so you can increase the height for this. Of course, you can also scale all of these objects without any problems, and everything will work the same. So you can do the regular scale, or you can change the height for this guy as well. And let's see, local rotation. Alright, so we're only affecting the lights, and then global rotation, we can also affect the whole setup as well. Lights will be exactly the same as the one before, so you can see how this turns on the volumetric lights. And if I make a quick render, you can very easily generate a volumetric lights pass. You have the control over distance, so you can increase the distance for the lights, and you can also increase the cone size of the lights. Alright, so you can make them sharper or larger. So just a standard Cinema 4D light setup. And then we have randomize, which is the same thing as before. This will create some nice flicker. You can control the speed. You can also control, you can also turn these reflectors individually. Right, so you can have some really cool randomness like this, and you can also adjust the random seed. So now if I control R, it's creating a pretty interesting effect. The only problem with this is that it kind of slows down your scene, and if you don't want to use volumetric lights, you can just turn them on, and this should really work properly now. One thing you can do here is you can simply, like I said before, you'll have your base render and your base animation, and then when you want to composite the volumetric lights on top of your base render, then you can turn on the lights and just deal with that individually and create your passes with this technique. Alright, so let's move forward. Let's delete this guy. Moving forward, we have another stadium reflector. Pretty much the same thing is going to be with the lights option, some rotation and height as well, and then the randomized properties. So like before, like the previous stadium reflector, let's go to rings. Rings are static. Tiles and floors also static. Tunnels will be static as well, and various. Most of these are statics. Maybe generator has some options here, and this, if you play this, you can see that this center piece is spinning, and you can simply increase the rotation for this. Alright, let's move forward. Another thing here will be stadium. Alright, so you can have the clones, you can have as many as you want, or increase the, or rather decrease the angle between them. Alright, so you can have 3 like these if you only want to cover a certain part of your scene. Let's move forward. Maybe vent also has like a slight option here, so the blades are spinning, and then you can control the speed. Alright, and let's see what else. We have walls. Walls are pretty interesting as well. You can have, let's see, radial clones. So if you control the height clones, this increases in height obviously, and clones offset, you can have some offset between these clones to just sort of like create more randomness, and not necessarily have them all lined up like this. This might be boring, alright, so you can just increase the offset of the clones, and you can also decrease these the completion here. So for example, maybe you want to create something like this, and this is also very interesting as well. And pretty much the same thing goes for wall 2. So that's the same setup here. Alright, and then wall hexagon will be a static object, and wall opening 1 and 2 also have like this nice reveal here. And wall opening 2 will be the same. So hopefully I covered everything, and if you wanna ask me anything, you can go to voxite.com/support and drop me a message, and I'll get back to you as soon as possible. Thanks for watching, I'll see you later.